Welcome to LTTV special, weekly special. Call it a special because it is with this is a job security mechanism, but two most special people at Leicester Tigers. The big wigs, you could call them. And without being rude, I'm going to say hello to the biggest wig first, and no offense, Andrea, but again, job security is an important thing in the current climate. Chairman Peter Tom and CEO Andrea Pinchen. We're here to chat about, obviously, a little bit of a disappointing week in the world of rugby and sport, you could say, but a week in which we reignited a fight against something we probably had the gloves down a little bit on for a little while there as things plodded along. But so I'm going to start first and foremost by saying thank you for coming on. I know it's a busy time. I know that it's Friday as well, so nobody wants to be doing any of this, but that's why we do them on Fridays, because it makes it a little bit more entertaining. But first things first, Mr. Chairman, how is the state of Leicester Tigers currently? That's about as open-ended as a question as you're ever going to get. So feel free to be as fickle as you want on that one.
I think, Sam, the toughest bit of last week's announcement by the government was that we actually had gone through all the pain of sadly having to make some of our colleagues redundant, the issue with some of the players, all those sort of things. And we'd sort of felt we were coming out the other side. We'd had tremendous support from our sponsors and season ticket holders and things like that. We were working, with the department in terms of working out how we got people into our games. And, Harlequins had played in front of a crowd and Bath were due to play. So it was quite a shock, I think, for everybody. I think the positive bit is that we had a very constructive Premier Rugby call on last Thursday, a week ago Thursday evening, and that was when it was decided that if there was going to be no games played in front of crowds until at least April, then the current professional club rugby in England, as it is, was unsustainable. And it was therefore decided, having spoken to the sports minister, that we should put a case to the government. And indeed, each of the clubs did a comprehensive review of the financial consequences of this. And then I think for clubs like Leicester, we've a huge amount about our position in the community and things like that. And so We've had a very good reaction from the government, I think, and when we read and the emails that have gone out and the notes to our supporters, I think none of us probably within the club had realised. I mean, we knew all the community, but we didn't know how many different initiatives within the community would cease if Leicester Tigers didn't exist.
Andrea, to pick up on Peter's words, and obviously without breaking any confidentiality or saying things that are private for the moment, can you explain a little bit about what those submissions entail in terms of going to the government?
Yeah, so every club had a standard document that came from DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sport. We're so used to that acronym now. But a lot of it was based around your financials, where you are, where you were before COVID hit, and also looking at how you would be able to come out the other side on certain timeframes. As well as that, there was a lot of detail that we wanted to put in regarding the more community-based initiatives, and looking at not only what we do in our city, but also our county and our wider catchment area. And the work that the club is involved in and is part of really covers such a wide remit. And a lot of charitable work, as well as working in schools and other clubs at grassroots level. So we wanted to highlight, potentially from a socioeconomic perspective, what the impact would be on our wider community were we not able to deliver that. And who would pick that up, how much would it cost local government to do that? And also, you know, probably worse than that, if nobody picked it up, there would be a lot of people that would be disadvantaged because we weren't able to fulfill programs that we wanted to, and you know, and help in areas that we feel is really important.
So without being too blunt, that I've never been accused of in my life, but this isn't a case of just trying to fulfill wage budgets for hefty salaries for rugby players and to keep executives in offices, and without being rude, keep directors happy in executive boxes, if you get my drift. This is about actually saving a community club and allowing the supporters to still have a club moving forward.
Well, one thing, Sam, sorry, Peter, we were all very adamant about is that this wasn't us trying to take advantage of an opportunity to say, this is our operating losses, or this is our forecast over the next 3 years, and, you know, government, can we have a handout? This is us saying, put all that to one side, because that is ours to work through. That is ours to deal with. That is our regular day-to-day business. If, as the announcement said, we weren't able to have crowds in until next March, that's a year of our trading without our most vital of income sources, which are the fans. So when you're looking at it from that basis, the submission we put in was very separate to our day-to-day running organisation of the business.
No, I think the important bit is that if you looked at English professional rugby and you looked at what the RFU are trying to do in terms of England internationals, and the fact is that if, as Andrea said and as the government announced, that we cannot have any crowds in the grounds until April, professional rugby in England as we know it would be completely and utterly unsustainable.
So obviously the crowds point is the big one, and that's what gets the headlines, but tell me if I'm wrong. What I'm getting here as well is that when you can't have a crowd in, that's a separate, or is it the same issue to, that is the same kind of protocol and regulation they're putting in place to say that you can't have a community carnival, you can't have an MBS tag festival, you can't have rugby camps for youngsters across the community. So rugby, while I know I guess, umbrella it as crowds aren't in the venue, and that's what makes money, let's call a spade, that's what makes a lot of money for the clubs. And then there's an offset to what partnerships are delivered on match days, put that aside. But I'm talking from this point of view about just community. Is it the same rules? So if crowds can't come in, you can't have rugby camps, coaching clinics, tag festivals, events for youngsters, all of those initiatives that sometimes are done at cost to the club, not necessarily done to make money for the club. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's, you know, whether it's supporting the Royal Infirmary and the different, Rainbow Hospice, all those sort of things are stuff that we do as, you know, automatically in terms of our involvement with the community. I think we did quite an interesting exercise. Chris Rose did quite a lot of work on this in terms of how much income a sellout crowd at Welford Road brings in terms of the railways, the buses, the shopping, you know, all that sort of thing. And I think the other bit of it that's very important is we shouldn't forget equally that as, you know, Leicester Football Club PLC, we employ, you know, 170 plus people. So you've got all of those issues as well. And I think if you look at the, you know, the great success that Matt Hampson's had with his foundation, you know, that's a huge part of our role as a club has been to support Matt and help him achieve what is achieved. And so it's all those sort of things. If you look at Saracens, you know, the young man there who now paints with his mouth, you know, the clubs do an awful lot in the communities. The other bit that's been interesting, I think, is that, and we fully understand how difficult it is for the government, you know, the three of us would be scratching our heads if we were given the job of trying to sort it out. But, if you can go to Legoland, it does seem a little bit strange if you can't go to a stadium where social distancing is, all those sort of things. So there is separately to the initiative that's gone to the government 2 days ago with Premier Rugby on our behalf, there's another group looking at, from how do you in the stadium, and whether that's horse racing, lower division football, basketball, whatever, there must be a way somehow of getting smaller groups of people into those big areas without endangering, everybody's health and safety.
Well, I mean, if I drive home this evening, I may drive past 3 or 4 pubs. I won't stop at them, don't worry. But I may drive past 3 or 4 pubs that have people in them. So without being, I guess, kind of condescending, that's a small room with a proportion of the room, 60-70% of it taken up by people indoors. It seems odd to me, in just layman's terms, that you then can't have a very large space that's open aired with the same proportion, if not less, taken up, if that makes sense, Andrea.
Yeah, it does. I think, the disappointment for us last week is, as Peter said, you're working your way through sort of the first wave of this that came back in March. And you can see the light of the tunnel because there's pilot schemes that have successfully taken place, and the results that are all showing, that there has been no impact, no negative impact on the community or the health service in those areas. So when you look at that and you look at Welford Road, where we're just short of 26,000 capacity, and we could host a pilot scheme for 1,000 people, we have all our risk assessments in place, we have everything ready to go. We've also done a lot of work so that it wouldn't cost the club to host that, so that we're looking at full-time staff members that we've trained to be able to be stewards on a match day, and they would volunteer their time, which we're really grateful for. Obviously, it would be some money because we'd need the experts there, but we know that we can host that safely, and we just wanted the opportunity, along with all the safety advisory groups, so all about access and egress into the stadium, public transport links, etc., all that work is done and ready to go in our risk assessment, so that we could show everybody that, look, it is safe. You can come down here. We can host 1,000 people, and then maybe next time round we can host 3,000 people, and you can start to try and get back to having people come to. I mean, that's what we're all about. Welford Road's great. It's brilliant. It's wonderful, and it's great going into the offices, and it's great going, to see the guys train down there. But it's nothing if you've not got fans in. That's what it's about, and we're ready to go with that, and we know that we can do that safely.
And I think, just following on from Andrea on that, Sam, all of the apps that you're able to do now on smartphones. So, Mr. and Mrs. Smith are leaving Hinckley. Well, we've got the app. We know where they're coming. We know, all that sort of stuff allows you to do this in a way that helps in terms of getting people into the stadium, but make sure that everybody does it, completely and utterly safely.
Yeah, I mean, we have a QR code set up that, when I went into Welford Road this morning, you scan it on your NHS app and it comes up that you're at the Welford Road Stadium, and the track and trace is there. So, we're very confident that we can do this safely.
And this isn't about opening Welford Road for match days like we've previously seen, is it? You're not talking about opening every food and drink outlet. You're not talking about having a plaza that's full of things for kids, Junior Tigers Club. This is actually just about opening doors, putting people in seats to watch a game of rugby, and those people leaving, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's. I think if any one of us was in government, you've got to appreciate how hard it must be for them, because what we're doing is as a government, we're saying to families, right, you can't mix because there's too many of you as a family unit to be able to be all be in one room together. However, go on Leicester Tigers, you can open up and you can host a rugby game. So I totally understand why there is this conflict and, you know, having to work through the safety measures and making sure that they don't risk by opening sporting stadia that people are, oh, well, I'm going to go around and see my family. And, you know, there is that whole piece. And I totally understand that. But actually take that back to common sense, take that back to let's look, can we do this safely? Everybody, including all of our safety advisory groups, are telling us that we can. All the COVID officers and medics that we're talking to have signed off on that we can. So, you know, we don't feel that it would be any heightened risk whatsoever.
Is it unique to Welford Road, what you've had to do in terms of planning and preparation, or are you working with other Premiership clubs so that there's a measure across rugby? Are you working with King Power and Leicester City, the Riders, the cricket? Is there conversations going on with people about this is how Leicester's got to do it, then we've got to mix in how rugby's going to do it, sport as a whole, entertainment as a whole, do you know what I mean by that? So is it a wider conversation, or is it very much insular about this is what we'll do at Welford Road and Leicester Tigers, kind of, you know, nerd at the front of the class, our hands up, ready to go, give us the award?
If I deal first, Sam, with sort of all the other clubs, you know, we're probably on a Zoom call, you know, 2-3 times a week, trying to work out how we help each other. And, you know, the sports minister was at Worcester last Friday, and, you know, that was helpful in terms of, for him understanding what it does. And so I think from a club point of view, I don't think we've ever been so united, and we're trying to help each other and everything else. And then if I pass across to Andrea, because she's been dealing with Leicester City and other people as well. So.
Yeah, so I've had a conversation with Susan Whelan, who's CEO at Leicester City, and she was really helpful. But my initial reach out to her was really regarding, you know, shall we work together to look at getting crowds back in, and let's talk to the Riders and the cricket and Speedway, which I have to admit was my passion when I was younger. So, you know, working together as a sporting group in the city and the county. Obviously, then the announcement last week came about, and so that sort of put us on a bit of a back footing. But, you know, everyone is working together to try and get fans back in stadia, wherever that is and whoever that is. And I think, you know, for me as well, the City Council have reached out to us, the County Council, and they have been really supportive and want to help us as much as they can to bring this matter to the forefront of government's minds, so that, you know, we can access any funding that we may be able to do so. And if that funding isn't available, then let us self-fund by starting to get crowds back in. So it's not just let's go down this path and let's be separate to it, but we have got to be mindful that we have got our own risk assessments that we can show as well.
And I think, again, you know, we don't really want to take the taxpayers' money. And we'd much rather, you know, be able to sort things out ourselves. I think there are another big thing as well is I think there is a benefit to the community from an uplifting point of view. You know, if suddenly we are able to have 1,000 or 2,000 people at Welford Road and so I think there's things in terms of, you know, that helping the community. The other bit that's been, you know, very positive in the last week is that we reached out to our supporters saying, would you get in touch with your, you know, MPs? And we've had a terrific response from that. And what has been very positive is that some of those MPs have actually gone back as well. So I think that, you know, we've been, I think one or two people, maybe some of us even thought, well, you know, will they respond? Will they be bothered? Yes, they have. So I think that is very helpful as well. And I know that talking to John White, the chairman down at Northampton, you know, they've had very good support there from their local MPs as well. So I think, you know, we are making sure that we're giving as much evidence as we possibly can to the government to say, actually, you know, the way out of this is really not to have to pay 100 million into Premier Rugby to distribute to the clubs or whatever, but actually, how do we, and the other bit that we've been getting across to them is that Sunday is the last game, apart from the, you know, the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and then the next games aren't till the end of November. So you've got quite a bit of time to ensure that those things. I think the other bit that could well be a game changer is that we've been heavily involved with Medusa 19, the saliva test, which we currently have, I think, over 1,000 tests at Oval Park to use. And that, I believe, is due to be approved. If that does, I think that, again, becomes quite a game changer. It's significantly less than what we're paying currently for the 100 tests we have every week. But it gives a result in 10 minutes and is surprisingly, and not surprisingly, but it's very accurate. So I think there's lots of things changing. And what we're trying to say to the government is, you know, there's another way out of this other than us with the begging bowl.
When you, and again, Peter, you might not be able to necessarily share some of this, but in those conversations you've had, even in the last couple of days with Premiership Rugby and fellow chairmen, what's the reaction from government been in the past week in terms of rugby reaching out to it?
I think we've had a very positive reaction, and I think, you know, there's lots of things to do with politics that, you know, we all have different views on. But no, we've been very, I think we've been very, very pleased with the way in which, and some of the package that we presented was at their request. So, you know, could you provide this information to do with that? I think the other, and this is a sort of a slightly round figure number, but, you know, in the last 12 months, if you looked at the accounts of all the different 13 clubs that make up the Premiership, you know, we've collected over £100 million worth of tax for the government. And, you know, so I think the other bit of it, which is very positive, is, you know, we've had help from the Inland Revenue, help to do with VAT. We're not having to make those payments. And, you know, we managed to get another agreement yesterday to extend that, which is good. So, no, I think there's a recognition that, and it's not just rugby. I mean, it's lots of other, you know, businesses and stuff that needs help. So we've been actually very, very pleased with the government's response so far. And
without pushing too far, but I'll go for it. A lot's gone on since this first began, and I think we all on this call and across many places thought we'd have maybe a month or so and then we'd be back playing and things would be normal and whatever else you want to dig into. But the point is we are here now. But in terms of all that's gone on, and a lot's been asked of supporters, a lot's been asked of our sponsors, our partners, a lot's been asked of players and their families, staff, and we know the impact it had on the actual staff numbers of the club, etc. Without pushing too far, you can understand why some people's questions are, what are the owners, what are the majority shareholders doing? Because now we're asking government. It's a lot of asking, isn't it? And that's the outside, I guess, impression of what's going on.
What we've done, Sam, at the Tigers is that, you know, we've done a lot of work over the past few months in terms of making sure the budgets and everything, we know where we are. We've got a great relationship with HSBC. And we have in place, you know, a bank facility we've got to sign off on. But and Tom and I have said, you know, we would certainly put at least 3 million in to help us going forward. And, you know, we have had offers of help from other shareholders in the Tigers and other supporters. I think for me, you know, the bit that's been, you know, sort of helped my morale, if you like, has been if you took the people within the Tigers, yourself, all the players, Andrea, and all the different people who work with, many of them working from home in difficult conditions with children running around their knees and all those sort of things. And we just had the most amazing response. And then, the response from our supporters, I've got a whole lot of emails that came in following the government's announcement last week from, supporters saying we don't have too much money, but, we'd be more than happy to give Tigers 20 quid, 50 quid and whatever. And, our season ticket holders, over 60%, are sticking with us, saying, we want to help. And our sponsors have just been outstanding. I mean, we were on the call with them yesterday afternoon, and Andrea, they're just outstanding, aren't they? Every one of them is sticking with us and has said, they will do whatever they can to help us. They're actually doing things in terms of with their employees to get in touch with, MPs and things like that. So, no, for me, it's been really, really moving in terms of the amazing support we've had right across the spectrum.
Andrew, I think the number or the figure, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that Finton isn't on the phone as soon as this goes to air, but we were talking around 5.5 million loss a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Does the last 7 days now change that? Or I guess as a second part to the question, all the money that's been spent on testing, like Peter's saying, around weekly, if not twice a week testing, are we looking at a bigger, I know that might sound obvious, but are we looking at a much bigger figure or a bigger figure, or are we in the same area given the fact that there is potential other avenues now to get some money to help keep it at that kind of loss?
Yeah, I think we're probably just shy of 6 million up to the end of September. It's where we forecast to be. We were working through the cash flow, obviously, very diligently, and had done calculations for our cash flow forecast based on crowds coming back in from January, and that was working through test pilots from October, building those numbers up and then having crowds back in. As that has been pushed further back and further back, that is the difficulty for us, because now we need to relook and reforecast, and that's really why we are asking the government for help purely on the COVID-related losses to our trading.
I think, Sam, if we sort of back up a bit in terms of, we took the view when we received the CVC money that we'd put it into the business.
Yeah.
So we went into the shutdown in a strong position. But our year ends in June the 30th. And if you look at our numbers for June the 30th, which will be published fairly soon, our income went down from, I think, 19 to just under 14. And our loss went up to 7 million. So we then, started to sort out from there, and we began, as Andrea said, to assume, yes, we are going to get crowds in at some time and things like that. So this is again, another kick in the teeth in a way, because we've got to deal with the bank. Tom and I were prepared to put the 3 in. So now we've got to work again, and you could certainly see how if we do nothing and we don't get any help, then you'd probably be looking at, somewhere around another 7+ million loss.
You said at the start it's unsustainable for professional rugby. What's the end point if it doesn't happen? When you say, I know it's unsustainable professional rugby, if you unpack that a little bit, what's the end point if this assistance isn't provided?
Well, I think that the challenge would be then, your biggest cost is obviously the player's salary. So I think, what you try to do is to find a solution that allowed you to continue, but in a very different way. So, as I've said many times, my task and the task of Andrea and all the others is to ensure that Tigers survive. And we've been through many, I mean, probably the biggest challenge we've had since 1939 or maybe since 1914. But, and I think for those, colleagues of ours and supporters who will watch this, we are, relative to what's going on, I'm comfortable that we're in a pretty strong position, but, we cannot ignore all of the events that are going on around us. And, I'm really pleased that we took the initiative to get involved with the people producing Medusa. So, we now have that in stock. We've started to use it, not in terms of the tests that we have to do to satisfy the protocol for Premier Rugby, but in terms of tests, and that's now available for our colleagues. I think the other bit for me, which is a little bit of an eye-opener, a colleague of mine in a different industry, his daughter's 11. She goes to school in London. She was diagnosed last Monday with it. And then another friend, Sam, who's just gone back to uni. He's been, so I don't know whether you've come across yet any friends or people who may have had, but you sort of feel it's getting closer, if that makes sense.
I think as well, Sam, when you talk about what is there an end date, or what does that look like? I think that the determination of everybody involved in the club, and whether that's Peter, who is putting an inordinate amount of hours in, the rest of the staff, the players, everybody. I don't remember a time, certainly in my tenure here, where the club's ever been so united, and everyone is doing their bit, and everyone is actually doing more than their bit, and a lot more hours, and also salaries are still for some people on 25% less, but what's happening with the players is also happening with the staff. Everybody is aligned, so I think there is an absolute determination that we are the keepers of Leicester Tigers for now. And yes, this is a god-awful challenge for everybody across the globe for a number of reasons, and health and well-being for people, perhaps more important than business, if you like. But this is us determined as a group to come through, and you see the support from the supporters, the sponsors, the bank, and everybody that's looking to help Tigers get through. There is an absolute determination that we will get through this to the other side.
Before we move on, because there is a point where we are going to just completely ruin people's Friday evenings by talking about such negative things. But I guess we're talking a lot of finance, and we're talking a lot of money, and we're talking a lot of, I know we mentioned community at the start, but this is all down to the nice stuff, the emotional stuff comes with money. Otherwise you just can't do it sometimes. But Peter, from your point of view, and again, I might be overstepping the mark, but has there reached a point anywhere through this where you've actually just thought, I can't do this anymore? It's not worth it, or I can't fight it. And we know what Leicester Tigers means to you. I don't think anyone's questioning that, but you can understand the question in terms of, at some point it must also just be a bit like, well, is it worth it? Is it worth the fight?
No, and I've never thought that. I mean, I'd like to be able to use the F word, but I can't on here. But I am absolutely. Well, I've thought. There's no way.
Genji does it. You can do it. Go for it.
There's no way we're going to let this beat us. And so I'm slightly Tigger-esque because I've got a few chips missing. But no, for me, this is a massive challenge, and it sounds a bit weird, I think, but I'm actually enjoying it. As daft as it sounds. I mean, I didn't enjoy a week ago when we got that, because it was a real kick in the nuts, but which is not appropriate to Andrew, is it? But so we might as well lower the tone completely now, Sam. But no,
yeah, it's Friday night. Go for it. Whatever.
So no, absolutely and utterly determined. And the more punches we take, the more we're coming back.
From your point, sorry, Andrea, but from your point, I guess there's also an emotional point or an emotional toll that it's taking on the individuals in the place. Now, I know that we know that the wider part, I'm not asking you to sit here and tell me a story or to name people, etc., but we know what it's like to work from home. We know what it's like to sit also in offices by yourself or 5 meters away from people, etc. There must be an emotional point from staff perspectives as well as those fans missing things that actually you couldn't also disagree with some staff who might also just say, is it worth it? Either keep fighting for less money on more hours, doing twice the job.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I mentioned before about the determination, that is there, and I think, you know, Peter, when he's talking about, no, you know, we're going to get through this. I think that absolutely cascades down to all of us. Look, I think last week I'd be lying personally if I'd said it didn't kind of give me a moment's hesitation, not to question whether it was worth it, but just like, oh gosh, you know, you've got to absolutely get yourself up and go again, you know, and almost do everything that you've done, you know, for months when you were hopefully coming out the other side. And I'm sure, well, I know, you know, because we've had calls with all the staff this week, and that people felt that too. And you're like, well, what's that mean for me? You know, because there is all that personal stuff to take into account. It's, yes, we want to save the club, but what about my mortgage and my kids and my, you know, so it's
my dog.
Oh yeah, your dog. So yes, there is that to take into account, and that is for us to manage. And what we need to make sure, and what we are doing, is that we're in touch with the staff continually, and people that have been on furlough in particular, who have been at home throughout this whole period. We need to touch base with them all the time. We're buddying them up with people that are at work. We're making sure that everyone's calling and speaking and being involved in what's happening. So we're looking at those opportunities, and I have to say again, our sponsors, you know, ride to our rescue and say, let us help you, let us do something for you. So there's so much work going on behind the scenes, as well as trying to conduct some form of normal business, you know, for when we come through and we crack on. So yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it, for sure?
I think people forget that, or maybe make the assumption that if you're a staff member at a club, you're not a fan as well. So I know fans are missing it, and yes, the games are on, and I'm in the very fortunate bunch of having been able to be at every game. But it's like you said, it's not the same. It's not as enjoyable. Yes, it's great watching Tigers play again. Yes, it's great watching Nemani Nadolo run out in Leicester Tigers colours. Yes, that's all fantastic. But actually, I've unfortunately been tasked with sitting near Matt Smith during most games, and I'd much rather have fans around me in the Crumbie than Matt Smith. And I'm not going to say no offense, Matt Smith, because I really hope he's offended by it, but it's more to the point that really, you know, all jokes aside, it's deflating a little bit. You get to a game day, you only have a really short space of time to kind of get settled. You go through a whole bunch of checks. You feel very much like you're going into like some CIA secret bunker, because everything's hidden and you've got to be tested and checked and all this. And then you kind of sit down and you've got no one to sit there and enjoy it with. So in a weird way, if you're at home with your family enjoying it, you probably got a little bit more atmosphere in your living room than we might have at Welford Road at the moment, in a weird way.
Yeah, like, because, and again, like you, Sam, I've been fortunate to be there, but you know, the lads run out and you're like, where's the run out music? Where's the clapping? Where's the stamping on the wooden?
Yeah.
Or, you know, where is all that?
You hear the studs come down the steps, and I find that quite creepy.
Well, you can just hear everything, can't you? And then, of course, like I get quite involved, so I like to, you know, cheer my team on. But, you know, you're shouting and cheering, and actually you just hear your own voice come back. And
yeah, the ref hears all the rude things I say about him now. Yeah. It's a bit like...
it's all your fault.
It was Matt Smith.
So when
I find it difficult because, you know, my youngest is 12, Georgia, and I'm not supposed to swear. And it's very hard. You know, I've sat many times in front of you, Sam, you know, effing it blind. And I find that very difficult. And then nobody to sit and analyse it with.
Yeah.
You know, and you go over and you just sat together and, you know, Freddie Stewart looked good, didn't he? You know, or somebody, you know, all those sort of things. And I think that bit is a massive, if you ask me, what do I miss most in terms of all this, and probably what upsets me most is not to be able to go to a game and share all of those moments, whether that's leaping up because somebody scored a great try or whatever. The fact now you get a red card for a punch-up, I don't get to cheer punch-ups anymore, but yeah, no, it's very strange. For me, I think the biggest shock of last week's announcement was that we've been sort of to a degree going week to week, and suddenly there's an announcement and you think, shit, that's 6 months. Mm-hmm. You know, that's through Christmas, through spring and into April before we're allowed to have any crowds in. That's the furthest since the pandemic started that my horizon relative to Tigers and my family life and everything has gone. And so I think what we're trying to make sure, which was back to an earlier point, is that, you know, everybody who works with us, all our colleagues, that we do everything we can to help them, you know, with the different issues that they'll be facing. And I do think it's a trite thing, but, you know, Tigers is a pretty tight family. And, you know, we've not had one complaint from anybody in terms of what we've been asking them to do, which is amazing.
So I'm going to steal your word, complaint. And now we shift away from one very dire subject to one that's improving, but still a little bit disappointing. Let's be frank. Let's talk about the rugby on the pitch, because the three of us are obviously the best people to talk about this. No question. In the whole of Leicester Tigers, who else should speak about the performances? But I'm going to put it from a fan's perspective, if that's okay. We are still 11th. We will finish 11th. I'm not going to go into the Saracen storyline because that's a separate issue, and I'm not going to let my personal opinion get in the way of that one for now. But the fans' perspective right now is we've got a lot of maybe hope. We've got a lot of momentum. Steve Borthwick arrived. Rob Taylor arrived. Aled Walters arrived. A new look squad. Very exciting in the fancy new gear. And Samurai, I know not playing in it yet, but all of that, it was lovely. They are a little bit deflated in recent weeks, given that performances have not necessarily transferred from the training pitch to the 80 minutes on the pitch. Now, we know they only see 80 minutes on the pitch, and I'm stealing some lines from players this week when they spoke to media about that. You don't necessarily see improvements that we're seeing because you're not seeing everything every single day. We know they're improving, and they're not going to lie that say we're just improving for the sake of it. But you must understand some fan concerns that we have still finished 11th with a gap between us and 10th.
No, absolutely. And you know, if you're a supporter, you have every right. I think for me, it's the events of the previous, you know, 2-3 years that we're now suffering from. I think the appointment of, you know, the whole of the new coaching setup. I think the changes we made at the academy probably 5 years ago now, and we're seeing, you know, some absolutely fantastic, whether it's Tommy Rafael, you know, I thought even in that very disappointing game against Bristol when, you know, we did look like boys physically, but, you know, Freddie Stewart was outstanding, I thought, in what was in a very difficult game. And, you know, we are much fitter, and you look at the side that we're putting out on Sunday. That looks a very strong team, however you look at it. And I think that some of the issues that we had to deal with in terms of, you know, a lot of players leaving, the issue with, you know, Manu and Greg Bateman and some of those things as well. And we're rebuilding. And I think some of the people we recruited are outstanding. And so for me, and this was always about getting through to season, you know, 2021. And the fact, I've said, there you go. The fact was we were going to have to play twice a week, which was always going to be difficult because we had a squad that was a group of senior players and then a big gap and a lot of younger players. And so I think, you know, if you're one of those young men playing in that game on Wednesday night, you should have learnt an awful lot, which will make you a better player when you put the Tiger shirt on again.
I mean, Andrew, you see it in the same way I see it on a daily basis to a point. And like I've said, neither you nor I are necessarily versed to say, oh, the scrum looks better because of this and this and whatever else, in fear of Boris. But it's a different place. And I don't know how to express it without sounding like it's cliche, like it's a PR line, that it is improving. So I don't know what your take on that is, but it's a very different environment and different place that there is improvement and there's so much good to come. You know it's coming.
Yeah, I think as a supporter, as you say, you see 80 minutes and you look at that and you're like, well, everyone's talking about these improvements. I can't see them. Or once you've calmed down a little bit and it's, you know, sort of a couple of hours have passed since the game's finished, you're then like, all right, I might have seen a few improvements, but look, still we lost, you know, and 40 points at Bristol, and so on and so forth. And I get that. But you look at what we're trying to achieve and where we've come from. Where we've come from is, without any excuses, so far behind other teams. Let's admit that. Let's front that up. It's clear for everybody to see. So there's no shying away from that. So the improvements that we're making aren't going to be immediately visible in every single game when Steve wants to see all of his players and give everybody an opportunity and make assessments ready for his first full season in charge. So have we got the results on the pitch that we felt that we deserved, or from the training should have been apparent? No. And as a supporter, you're not seeing all that background stuff. So I totally get that frustration. Are there steps being taken? There's every single day there are steps moving us forward every single day. You know, Steve is an extremely detailed, analytical coach who basically says to all of us, and whether that's me, Peter, George Ford, Freddie Stewart, whoever, you are either putting into the battery and giving that power as a positive, or you are taking energy away from it. So everything that we're doing is step by step putting us into a better position for the future, because we know we've got a long way to go.
You know, there's a level of energy that you pick up, and you know, whether that's you just see Boris trundle into view with a smile on his face when we won the scrum at Northampton, and you know, you see Aled. I mean, he's inspirational, not just in what he's doing fitness wise, but in terms of, you know, how he speaks to guys and everything. And Steve is just outstanding in terms of his detail. You know, Geordie is fronting up and dealing with difficult questions from people like you. And so I think we're making progress. I can fully understand as a supporter, well, you know, show me. And, you know, I did take a deal of pleasure in the fact we beat Northampton, despite them trying to take it away by saying they didn't play very well. And so I come from the school that says if you don't play very well, that's because the opposition didn't let you. But I've never been too keen on Saints anyway, but there we go.
I think some of the elements that, you know, not just for what you would class as your regular first team or your first choice players, you know, what some of the work that's going on for the younger players to evolve and develop them as we move forward. So for instance, we're looking at, you know, when when we're back up and running with the academy team in place, you know, that they should very much be led by Alid, so that as they're coming through the academy, and it isn't a natural, oh, you've graduated, here you go into the development squad. There is a real rigorous program for you to be able to get into that development squad. I said it at the beginning when I first took over, and I genuinely believe that they are our pot of gold, they're our future. And therefore, for me, we should be looking at giving them training, mentoring, leadership training that will help them both on the pitch and off the pitch. But the communication skills, the decision making, you know, decision making under pressure, all of those skills as a leader, both on the pitch and then in their future lives, will really help them. And that's what we want. We want them to come out of that having qualifications, having a more rounded education and an experience, and actually be training towards the first team requirements. So the positional traits have been identified. What does Steve want in each of his positions? And all those positional traits have been identified. So we train all the way through to be able to deliver that. So all those elements that have been good. I mean, let's not get away from what the academy has achieved. It's been outstanding. But every opportunity we can, we're looking at everything across the board to make it better, just that bit better, just that bit pushing a little bit harder. So that stands us in good stead.
Let's not give Matt Smith too many compliments.
He's
So as a final point, before we do touch on what people can do in terms of the DCMS stuff, because I have it here. I want to go back to that just quickly because we want to have a final message if they haven't seen it. But as a final point, the shop, Andrea.
Yeah.
It came back in-house. It was a big deal. How has that gone since it was back in the hands of the club?
It's I think it's opportune that that you're asking today. I don't know if this is going out today, but we've just launched our captain's collection. So that is a look back to all the real famous shirts that everyone's been asking for, all the cotton replicas, and they look great and they are great. The quality's really good. I would say that, I suppose. But I've certainly been in the shop and spent more so far in this short period of time than I have in the last few years. So we are above our expectation of where we thought we would be. Thank you to everyone that's purchased. I know, Peter, you've purchased quite a lot as well, haven't you?
I've been supplying lots of people with shirts, yeah.
And you know, we want to, we're pitching to Finton as well to allow us to have a little bit more money so that we can get additional stock in for Christmas. So Finton, if you're watching this, it's coming your way. But you know, look, we listen to the feedback. We want to look at sizing. We want to look at quality. We want to give supporters what they want and what they deserve. And you know, we've been really pleased with the support of that. And the guys have worked really hard to get that off the ground. And here is your snood that I bought you, ready for match day.
I'm going to have that on Sunday. My only concern is the models we're using for stuff at the moment. Surely we could have better. No, that's a bit unfair on our staff. Look, as a final point, I'm not going to say that because, I am going to say it because I wasn't asked, but that's fine. This is a letter that is on our website. It's an example of a letter, rather, sorry. It's somewhat emotive, it's somewhat passionate, and it's a way in which people can, I guess, frame their conversation with local representatives, with MPs, regarding the current situation. Peter, as a final word, for those that haven't yet or have already, other than the letter or as the letter, what is it that we're asking fans to do now as citizens to go out and speak to people?
I think what came out of our conversations with civil servants and government was, because we're on the inside, we assume everybody knows about rugby, everybody knows about Leicester Tigers. And what we actually found was, of course, lots of people don't know very much at all about rugby, think it's just an, England, Wales or England, Scotland or whatever. And so part of what we're trying to do is to educate, And so what we want all our supporters to do is contact, and if you live in Norfolk or wherever you live, you know, contact your local MP and make sure he's got all of this information so that he's able to influence what we're trying to achieve to ensure the survival of professional rugby.
Lovely way to finish. I thank you both for your time, and I will send this off to, I'll find out who my local MP is first, but I will go in now and have a look at this and take out all the parts that we can't use from you, Mr. Chairman, but we'll go from there.
I'm not going to flash my bottom today.
Yes, no, that's absolutely fine. I appreciate both of your time, and I hope fans do. We will speak next season, this year, whatever it is.
Whenever it is, yeah. Thank you, Sammy.
No worries. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
See you guys soon. Be safe.